they underestimate
Yeah.
the power of a deer's intuition and his ability to stay alive. They're really good at living.
That's because they're watching Ben Rising call them pine goats.
Goats that live in the woods. That are good. Yeah. The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by DeerGro.
Man, it's almost food plot season, Jared, and DeerGro is one of those products that has really changed the way that we plant food plots and the success we've seen from them.
No doubt. I've been, trying to plant food plots my entire whitetail hunting career, which is a little shorter than yours. But the minute that I started, or that I realized that I could get DeerGro back into some of these remote plots where I couldn't get lime or fertilizer, especially in the 50-pound bag, format. So everything was changed. I could get into these spots moving forward with a backpack sprayer, and that's since escalated to these 40 or 60 gallon sprayers, and we're doing upwards of 5 to 10 acre food plots just with DeerGro and having phenomenal success.
Yeah, and I mean, with the price of fertilizer, lime, diesel, everything this year, I mean, what better way to get in there and grow a successful food plot at about a third of the cost? Check out DeerGro at DeerGro.com. And we're back.
Hey.
HUNTR Podcast, episode 84. Nick keeps us in line.
What's up, guys?
Hi.
Rock and roll.
I think it's still July. It's July. I mean, I know it's July now, but I think if you're listening to this, it's probably still July.
Yeah, it's July, and you're talking to a certified drone pilot over here. Commercial drone pilot.
Wow.
Took our maiden voyage today.
What does that mean? I'm like the stewardess.
For now, why don't you serve me some peanuts?
But you give me a drink, bitch.
Kind of feels nice. Usually I'm cooking the green beans in the microwave, and now look who's serving peanuts.
Yeah, we got that drone up off the ground.
Yeah, thank God for that return to home mode, because
I don't know how you'd fly that fucker back.
Once you lose sight, it's
she gone.
It's a bit sketch.
Mm-hmm.
On muscle memory. Once we get a few more flights under our belt, we'll be in good shape. Here's what's crazy is that anybody can fly a drone. You can just buy one and fly it. No training, no nothing. But to fly them commercially, like so for our real estate business, we have to have
one
commercial
license.
So.
Yeah, for the FAA.
Passed by 1 point.
Hey, that's what counts.
I'll take it. D's get degrees. I studied for 2 days, and
that's pretty good.
Yeah,
I'm surprised they don't make you actually fly a drone for the test though.
Seems a little weird.
Because all you gotta do is be smart enough to pass the multiple choice questions, and then they're like, cool, and then you take up a drone and wreck it right into a 747.
Well, so what was on the test was airspaces, communication channels. Frankly, in hindsight, I don't even know where you get that. There's maps and stuff that say, where are those maps? It's study materials they provide you with.
Yeah. I think there's places on Google you can go in and you can type in address and see if it's restricted airspace.
I mean, those airspaces are complicated. They're basically upside down layer cakes.
Yeah.
Because they're small, big.
Because I've been looking at them for Nick when he was doing some of those ones closer to the airport. I'm like, I don't know.
Let me check Google Maps here. Yeah, I think you're fine.
Yeah,
I don't see anything here.
Can I lease this airspace? According to my real estate test, I can lease the air rights, right?
Yeah.
So, anyways, drone pilot.
Yeah, that's fun. We're going to go fly that over a 77-acre deer in Burgettstown today. And fun, man. We're cranking right along here. We talked with Steve Shirk this morning, aired last week.
Yep.
And
chiming in on some summer scouting techniques, some camera stuff.
And by the time this airs, we're going to have, some bucks pretty darn close to full grown. End of July, man, that's where they're at.
If I carry the one, ... I believe people are listening to this the week of the 25th, which means if you're listening to this, we're in Kansas. We're in Kansas.
That's right.
Hanging stand, sweating our balls off.
Yeah.
It's hot. I can tell you already.
Yeah, that's okay.
Yep. We're in Kansas, hanging stands and cameras.
Don't be jelly. Be jelly. We'll work all year for that.
Yeah. So I think if I timed it right, that's where we're at when this is dropping.
Sweet.
So, but we've got kind of a powerhouse guest today.
Yeah, man.
Heavy hitter.
Industry beast.
Yep. So we've got Mark Drury on today.
Yep. Thanks to Ben Rising for making the connection.
Yep. Mossy Oak to Mossy Oak connection. See how that works? Yeah. I think it'll be interesting to see. We're kind of, spin off of Steve's discussion, and just kind of keeping tabs on some of these bucks from the later, parts of summer into the hunting season. And if you haven't been living under a rock, you know that juries are big on these 13 phases, right? That's what they really cover. And so I'm thinking it'd be a good use to have Mark break down some of the 13 phases here, and ultimately how he, I guess, approaches each one of those. Whether it's in general, if it's for a specific buck, whatever.
Well, and I know that. Unless you've been living under a rock, Drury's are big on the DeerCast app that they've come out with. Mm-hmm. You've got probably a little more experience with it than I do, but I know that its basic function is to predict deer movement, kind of to aggregate information,
using weather,
information that we
data.
all use for pinpointing bucks, peak movement times, what types of stands we should be hunting, and I think that is probably tied pretty closely or based on those 13.
It is 100%. Phases. There you go. Of the season that those guys have identified. Well, and they've got some new features coming out. Mark sent me a video the other day, and so they've got some pinpointing food plots to estimate based on radar, essentially, how much rain that actual food plot would have got. They've got scent disbursements for not only your stand spots, but access. So when you're walking in, how your scent would disperse on that access coming in.
Wow.
So there's some new upgrades that they've put into the app, but I think he's got quite a bit of stuff to go over, and we've got him for about an hour. We've cornered him.
That food plot precipitation metric would be interesting, because I know that I use Weather Underground. It's basic. A lot of people hate it, but it's
it's not bad. It just Weather Underground pulls data from the nearest weather station, and so there's one weather station in a 20-mile square radius. And that easily could miss your food plot. So unless you have a weather station, which I do, I've got a Kestrel weather station I'm putting on an actual food plot in Ohio. Unless you have that, you don't have any estimates of what it would be. This is kind of making that all come together from what I've understood.
Yeah. That's kind of where I'm at. So Weather Underground does have a like a hindsight feature. Basically, I can look and it'll say you got a half inch of precipitation within the last 24 hours.
Yep.
Which is cool, and but so between that and I've got a bunch of stealth cams running, so I can see. I was like, do they look wet? Yeah. And then I call my dad, who lives there, and I say, hey, we get that rain, and he'll say, huh?
He's like, I don't know, my nipples are hard, but probably.
Yeah, let me see. It doesn't seem like we got it, unfortunately.
He's like, I'm not here. He's like, I'm fishing right now. So
I just asked him. I said, are you going to be there for that box blind delivery tomorrow? He's like, no, I'm driving to Nebraska. I said, for what?
Jeez.
Life of a retired guy, man.
Playing on the road. Nice. Yeah. Well, I think we're going to jump right into it with Mark.
Cool. Let's get him on.
All right. And we got Mark on here. Mark, appreciate you coming on the HUNTR Podcast today. On your vacation at that.
Yes, absolutely. Nothing I'd rather do than talk to you guys here.
Just sitting on the Lake of the Ozark, what's the weather like down there?
You know what? It's hotter than blazes here.
I bet, man.
Heat index over 100 for the last few days. So, but north of here, 6 hours, which is where my farms are, 5.5 hours. We caught rain last night. It's in right around 80 today there. So the farms are above the cold front, and we're below the cold front.
Have you guys been dry up there in northern Missouri?
The last 2 weeks we have been, but prior to that, it was pretty timely. The crops don't look too bad. Our stuff's pretty decent.
I think we've been Jared and I are in this Southwest Pennsylvania, Southern Ohio part. We've been getting missed quite a bit. It seems like they pop up, they shoot south of us, and
it's funny how some of that terrain, those mountain ranges just push them. Like here in Pittsburgh, we'll get it, and then I'll have to call Dad and say, hey, did you get it? They're only 2 hours west of us here, but
nothing.
For some reason, it splits around my farm more often than I would like.
Yeah, but, it's been dry, and I've seen that.
You and every deer hunter in America.
I know, man.
We should have a radar watching club, because that seems like that's all we do this time of year is, here it comes. Oh, it split me.
Well, that's why when Jeremy mentioned this morning that, part of your guys' app here is this actual, the food plot precipitation meter or whatever. We'll get into that. That's where it came up. I'm like, man, that would be super useful, because it's I can watch Weather Underground and it says, hey, you got a half inch of rain. And then I'll call Dad, who lives there, and I'll say, hey, what'd we get? And he's like,
nothing.
Not much.
Yeah, that rain station is really a cool feature. It's one that we live by. We've been playing with it for a few years, and we're really excited about that offering. It's because who has time to go check a rain gauge anymore?
Exactly.
With today's technology, it does allow you to get pretty dang close as to what you actually received, and then the prediction model that comes along with it, it'll give you the next 72 hours prediction as well. So it tells you what you got in the last 24 24 and what you're about to get in the next 72. And then if you go, well, I wonder where I'm at historically year over year, you could put the date range in there and it'll tell you what you've received for the year on that area. So It's amazing how important precip is to overall antler development, herd health.
Yep.
I mean, it is everything. And I mentioned it in the piece that I had sent you guys, like, look no further than an area that's going through drought to understand just how vital water is to every living thing.
Well, and that's what, Jared and I, the last couple of years, have been hunting southern North Dakota for mule deer out in the Badlands. And a couple of years ago, 2020, we walked into these bottoms, and I mean, it's lush alfalfa on the river. You got the Badlands up in the bluffs. These mule deer are coming down. They're moving back up into the bluffs. And I mean,
life changed. It was our first time out there.
It was, you couldn't have painted it any better, right? We come back a year later. They literally had not got like any rain since we left. And it's like a deer doesn't even exist anywhere.
Freaking dust bowl.
It's a dust bowl,
Exactly what I'm talking about. That precip is everything. The herd went somewhere.
Yeah.
They're somewhere else.
Yep. We found them in the grasslands, like 10 miles north. They were in the grasslands, and now you're trying to stalk a mule deer in grasslands, and it doesn't go real well for you.
Yeah. So now with that feature specifically, you could place those rain stations out there, and it'll tell you how much precip you're getting out there, so you can make a plan ahead of that.
Yep.
It's for access. I mean, it's just so important, precip. And I think it's been overlooked for a long, long time. And it's something that Terry and I have honed in on for years. So you see my mom going.
I see her trying to sneak past her. Hey, Mom.
Well, and I think, on that side, Mark, the thing that people have grabbed, because we've all watched, radar. We all go to Weather, Underground, or whatever it is, Weather Channel, doesn't matter. And, but that's pinging off like a single station that is associated with that zip code.
She's trying to duck on.
You're fine.
Oh,
hey, Mom. Nice to meet you. I'm Jared. This is Jeremy.
Hey, how are you?
Do you know she killed 3 deer with a crossbow last fall?
Holy cow.
Oh, yeah, she's Mark Drury's mom. She better.
I plan to do it again.
Yeah.
Amen.
With horns this time.
Every time Mark's checking the cameras, you're yelling dibs, dibs.
That's mine.
She's 89, and last year Terry was hosting her. The year before that, I was hosting her, but she's 89 now. She went through a full knee replacement April the 20th, and I mean, she's getting around just great. And her motivation was to get back out there and go deer hunting this fall.
Fantastic.
I'm gonna make it.
And you're about to take her water skiing probably on Lake of the Ozarks with that new knee.
She was on the boat this morning, but now she's back in. She's going to put some ice on that knee, and she loves to polka and deer hunt. So those were her 2 motivators to get over that surgery.
There
Fantastic.
you go.
Nice to meet you.
You're going to get down to do, so that's
Yes, ma'am.
That's perfect. Well, we hope you have a great season this year.
Oh, she will. She's going to have a good season.
I'm going to do it. I'm going to hopefully a nice big buck.
Oh, we know you will. We know. If not, we're going to blame Mark for it.
Yeah. It's the guide. It's the host.
I'll wear it. She killed the previous season. She killed a 13-point buck with me that scored right at 140. And then that was with a crossbow. And then during rifle season, she killed a 5 or 6 year old deer that got a little broke up, but he was a real nice deer too. So she's quite a shot too. She doesn't miss. I know that much. But in all reality, Terry and I, in terms of our outdoor DNA and heritage, it really comes from Mom. Our dad did not hunt, but she taught me how to skin a squirrel and how to skin a rabbit,
wow,
and how to trap and all kinds of stuff. So she grew up on a farm, literally dirt floor poor, and our DNA and our heritage comes from her and her dad.
Wow. And were you born in Missouri?
She was St. Genevieve County.
St. Genevieve County. That's
where Terry still lives.
And how interesting is that? Because you hear it a lot. Like, I mean, all of us have different influences, but, for your mom to be the one that really got you into that stuff, I don't think you hear that very often anymore.
No. Well, my hubby was in construction, so he, when he could be indoors, he took the indoors, which most of his work was outdoors. So,
yeah.
But I like the hunt. And I was I had 3 sisters, so I was the hunter with my dad. So,
very cool.
And if you're like, so my mom's dad, a lot of times what they had to do is, they grew up poor too, and they essentially hunted deer and turkey and squirrels for food on the table. I mean, it was for sustainability, and we look at it as such a big passion of our lives and hobbies now. They kind of got into it because that was the only meat that was on the table, and I'm sure, if I pull my grandpap aside and say, hey, how many deer did you have to shoot out of season to put meat on the table? He did it every time to make sure that the family ate.
Tell them about the time you lost the squirrel off the stick.
Oh my gosh. Yeah, with my dad, I was always his shadow. And we had so many squirrels, I don't remember if it was four. You
lost one.
And I lost one off the stick. So I was in trouble. I lost a squirrel. We backtracked. And if I recall, I don't think we found it.
No, you didn't.
I mean, it was.
Check this out, guys. Look at this with a crossbow. You're going to like that.
Huh?
Oh, yeah.
Oh,
wow.
Very nice.
Love that.
That's the 13 point from last year?
Yeah, a couple years ago.
Yeah,
How cool is that?
Very cool.
Very cool.
So,
and just smoked him.
I want to do that one more time.
You got plenty left in the tank. We can tell.
I hope so.
Very good.
I don't want to interfere.
Thank you.
Thank
nice
you
to
for
meet you.
coming on.
She's the star of our show. I'll tell you that much.
How cool is that, man? It is funny. Like, and I don't, I never have problems talking about it around my family, but my mom's family, she was one of 7, they grew up dirt poor and my grandpa, would hunt deer, turkeys, squirrels, rabbits, whatever, to put food on the table. What a kind of different conversation that we have nowadays in that mindset.
Right.
Right.
Yeah, you lose that deepest connection.
Sure.
Right. You don't hear about it or see it as much anymore. And I'm sure it still exists, obviously, but not to the frequency it did when she was a young child. She was telling a story there about the squirrels that she may have been 10, 11, 12, something like that when that occurred. So she's now 89. So it's a different world and a different, people hunt for different reasons now. Yeah. Certainly.
Well, and I think that's what kind of makes it interesting, because you had this entire generation that was kind of throttled into it because, it was out of necessity, and then slowly it became not necessarily a necessity. And you saw that in the 70s, 80s, 90s, and then to the point where it's truly a passion or a hobby now. And that's not saying that there's anything wrong with that, but that evolution over the last, 60 years or so has changed the dynamic of hunters as we know it, for sure.
Yeah. Some for the better and some not so much for the better, right?
Agree.
We've said that a lot here. Like, Mark, a lot of our conversations within the past, couple of months have been kind of around outdoor media and the way that it's progressed or regressed or, transitioned from, like I mentioned earlier, the Outdoor Channel for so long was such a primary focus, was kind of like a place of unity that, even though we had differences in the field, somebody hunts with a crossbow, somebody hunts with a gun, somebody hunts for meat, or for antlers, we all watch the Outdoor Channel, or Sportsman's Channel or whatever that is. And as it's progressed, you have these new generations of hunters. I'm probably one of them, so I'm 29, Mark, and we've got people starting to hunt now in their 10, 12 years old. Your boys
my kids are 6 and 10, and they
6 and 10
hunt a lot.
And it seems like our attention spans, obviously, are getting like this. And we've got platforms now, Facebook, Instagram, and it's evolving even into, TikTok at this point. It's like this content consumption model is just getting shorter and shorter. And Jeremy and I kind of cross-analyze that with what hunting is. And,
not only that, but the consumption model is shorter and shorter, and the access is broader and broader in terms of who's supplying that content.
Right.
We came up through an era where it was impossible to get on TV. Yeah. I mean, it took us a very long time. It was impossible to get distribution with your videotapes or whatever your production was. It was impossible to get a story published in Outdoor Life.
Right.
And so there was this giant media funnel that was vetted multiple times before it hit the end consumer, whether it went on television, and you finally get to the Outdoor Channel. Well, we produce it, we vet it, it goes to the network, they vet it again. and okay, we approve it, and it goes out to air. Now look, anybody can say anything, write anything, do anything, and publish that out there. And I don't know that that's a good thing. I love the fact that it's freedom for a lot of creative producers out there. But on the other hand, where's the vetting process at? You know, when people used to write stories,
sure,
it would go through a multiple layer of editors to hit Outdoor Life's pages or Deer and Deer Hunting or North American Whitetail. And it was valuable and well done and appropriate. So now there's some stuff out there that is quite inappropriate, and just people doing things that shouldn't have an audience, right?
Yeah.
And we can look at it as hunters and go, oh, that was dumb. That should have never been written or done, right? Or shown. But the non-hunters get to see some of this stuff. And if it goes viral just because it's of a crazy nature, as opposed to a message about conservation and the right tone, which won't go viral, those are the things that I think are a paradigm shift in the perception of hunters.
Yeah.
So
it's a very interesting discussion, and it's not one that's unique, I don't think, to the outdoor industry. I mean, that's social media in general has provided individuals, look at news in general. Yeah, all these people that, in our opinion, shouldn't get the attention, but it's going viral or whatever. It's much more catered to, in essence, these algorithms are supposed to be feeding people what they want, essentially. But, and to tie it back into more of the hunting model, what's frustrating, I think, for Jeremy and I is that, like, man, hunting is a lifestyle. It's something that happens over the course of a lifetime. And so even try to boil it down to one season or one succession of hunts that leads to, the killing of one specific animal. How can you possibly capture the emotion, the work, the stress, the success that comes with that situation in a 30-second TikTok video? It's not possible.
You can't. The better stuff I think is found over there on YouTube, where the longer form is desired. But Facebook, TikTok, Instagram, it's all average watch time will be 7 seconds or 15 seconds, whatever it is. And we try to create stuff that gets into that realm, but it's very hard to do it and do it with anything that's the appropriate time it takes to show what really went behind it. But you take stories over on YouTube, a lot of our stuff is 20 minutes to 50, 60 minutes to really show those long form stories.
Yeah. And I certainly enjoy watching those, to their fullest length. But like what's concerning to us, and we've experienced, anybody that's been on those short form platform videos experienced the dopamine rush that you get from something like that. And it's addicting, and these kids especially, I think, are especially susceptible to it. And so, you kind of have a generation of and I don't know exactly what is happening with YouTube's analytics, but I would imagine that the demographic of people who are watching YouTube videos to completion is aging, and the demographic beneath us is not on YouTube as much. They're on TikTok.
Yeah.
Certainly the very, very young ones are, but our average consumer on YouTube, if I'm not mistaken, is in their early 30s, if I'm not mistaken, as opposed to Outdoor Channel, which the average age there is 55.
Oh.
It's 55, but still and yet, the Outdoor Channel is still our best and most watched programming because they have such a broad spectrum, So
interesting.
I think
more than YouTube.
Oh yeah, Outdoor Channel certainly. Yep.
What is the primary method, Mark, or how would I get the Outdoor Channel? I could reach out and do that through like Dish and Comcast and stuff, I suppose.
Your local cable provider.
Well, they have streaming services now too, Friendly or
MOTV
Friendly.
and stuff.
Yeah, Friendly is the streaming service, and there was another one I saw recently.
Gotcha.
Too.
Well, My Outdoor TV, yes. And then that would be for stuff that's a year old and older.
Yep.
And that consumption in there is huge right now for us.
For sure.
Like My Outdoor TV is a very good platform for us, but like Friendly or Fubo, is it Fubo?
Yeah, Fubo, I think is what it is. You're right. I've used the Friendly one.
Outdoor Channel's normal programming. So like Taylor out in Utah, she watches Outdoor Channel on Friendly.
Gotcha.
I think a big one there, Mark, and you kind of touched on it. I don't remember which podcast we hit it on. We were in a vet with somebody there, but the
just you and I.
Was it the non-vetting thing, right? And again, all of us.
Oh no, that was with.
Who was that with? Is it with Eric?
Yep.
We got into this whole spiel basically about.
Well, I got into a censorship discussion.
Yeah, because we're all familiar with what Facebook and Instagram and these guys are doing on a censorship level. And we're not saying that. But to your point, Mark, from the writing side or from the TV side, there were always outside parties that were vetting the content for accuracy, acceptability.
Let me throw this out there as a devil's advocate for, and Mark, you're probably in an excellent position to, speak to this. The downfall to that, the negative to that situation that I see is while it is vetted heavily by producers at the Outdoor Channel in this instance, it also has the potential to be heavily influenced by whoever's paying for it, which is manufacturers. And so that's where you see outdoor television in a state of, and obviously can't point fingers at any one show or channel, but certainly there have been shows that are influenced by their sponsors and say, hey, this arrow is the best, or hey, this food plot seed is the best. And that's because that's who's paying the bills.
But that's an economic model that is a must in order to get there. So any outdoor producer that isn't influenced in some way, shape, or form by relationships and partnerships, I would say that would be rare,
Right.
Sure.
But
successful ones at that, at least,
Successful ones, but it goes down to whether the partner chose you or you chose the partner. So
right.
you got, if you look at your A-level producers, and I don't know if that's the correct term, but there's a certain set of producers that choose the partner more so than the partner choosing the producer. And then you see other programming where it's like, that's a brand I've not even heard of, So, we're very proud to be aligned with partners that are iconic brands,
Sure.
The Winchesters, the Mossy Oaks, and it's ones that we align most closely to from a conservation standpoint. Those are the ones that we love the most. The people that have the exact same DNA we do and are more worried about the future than they are the present.
Yep.
And that's something that's very important to Terry and I, is conservation of the resource. And if you watch our programs, hopefully you take that away from them. But we love aligning with brands like Leupold and Winchester and Mossy Oak and GSM, people that understand how important it is for this next generation to find it better than we found it, because we really want to leave it better than we found it.
I think that's where, and I get the economic model. I think most people do. The accuracy of information being put out there. And this is where it gets into how do you not censor, but how do you filter a YouTube, right? Or how where is the quality assurance testing or checking there that's happening? And the answer is you can't necessarily. What ends up happening though is people start falling into some of these holes where the data is just it's wrong, the information's wrong that's put out there, or it is completely unflattering to us as hunters, and then it starts soaring in that direction. And once that skid starts happening, I don't know how you stop it.
Sure.
Well, you don't stop it, and then it's not vetted, it's censored.
Exactly. That's it.
We're in the penalty box at TikTok right now because we showed shed antlers. They flagged us as cruel and graphic because they were. I'm not lying. Jeez, I mean, they shut us down. Over
how dare you rip those off that precious deer?
Exactly. And then the other one, they flagged us twice. We have 2 strikes against us. They're about to eliminate our page altogether.
Crazy.
Wow.
Taylor's page on Instagram or on TikTok, she was at 20-some-odd million views in 2 weeks. She had earned $8,500 from the creator studio, and they wiped her page away because there was a bow in one of her latest
Holy cow.
posts.
Wow.
She showed a bow, and they got rid of her entire page.
Well, and that's the thing. And again, from the outdoor industry standpoint, if I'm looking at Taylor there, I'm thinking okay, Taylor's a major influencer. She has a huge following. And for them to be able to just wipe that off the face of the earth, how can we not fight back on that? We're literally nothing in their eyes.
We're not only nothing, we're the enemy, right? I mean, whoever the hell's behind TikTok thinks hunting is the worst thing ever.
Crazy.
But yet you go on there and there's 13-year-old girls literally wearing nothing, jigging around, and that's acceptable all day. I mean, the stuff they do, it's the world's upside down.
It's
what's
crazy.
right is wrong, and what's wrong is right.
And that's where, again, to I think your point, Jared, of this like short, attention span is all of a sudden the things that I see being forced out there from the TikTok world or Instagram Reels or whatever it is, I'm like, well, like that's not, like I saw one the other day, girl was, hot girl shooting the bow. She didn't even have an anchor point. She wasn't even close to having an anchor point, had like 10 million views. And I'm thinking, how many people that have never shot a bow saw that and think she's doing it right?
Well, it's
crazy.
It's kind of sad. I mean, I think we're talking about kind of two different issues here. The censorship one versus, the
information.
Yeah, the information one or whatever. But like, what's?
Well, you're talking about by vetting. I meant people were making sure it was right and appropriate.
Well, they're different machines. It's an actual publication. Like you said, the same could be said for local news or a magazine. It was
right.
built.
It was. My point is, it was correct when it hit that for consumption.
Right.
Agree.
And there were no other avenues other than television and the magazine industry.
Well, and Mark,
now all of a sudden, everybody's a writer and everybody's a producer with no vetting.
100%.
So I'm not saying it's right, wrong, or indifferent, but it is a dangerous place that we're in without checks and balances along the way in a sport that is quite emotional. You're taking an animal's life, and if that is not presented in the correct way, like I said, you guys can look at it and go, that was poor taste. They shouldn't have done that.
Yeah.
But what about the non-hunter looking at it? And if that's the one that got out of the gate, out of the algorithm, and it's the one going viral, all of a sudden it gets 2 million views and 90% of them go hunt.
I see a big risk there for sure.
It's the wrong message. Whereas prior to that, it all went through a funnel, and it was.
I do see it in our industry though. Like even the guys, like let's say the three of us, right, that are very well in depth with like food plots and aging deer on the hoof and stuff. Like I've seen videos come out from people that are well recognized that put out there, and they'll say, yeah, this deer was 8 years old or whatever, and it's like, no, it's not. It's I don't necessarily think that they're doing it maliciously. They just don't know. But because now they've placed it out there, and let's say 50,000 hunters have engaged with that video and have watched that, what misinformation has now taken to them to where they're saying, well, yeah, I shot this buck, he's probably 7 or 8, and it's a 3-year-old. Like clearly it's a 3-year-old.
Yeah, age is one of those things that's always misrepresented. Yeah. Like, it is what it is.
Well, I know, and nobody's perfect. I'm sure even on Outdoor Channel, I mean, I'm sure it happens. I guess.
Oh, yeah. We all do it. Help Terry and I miss age.
100%.
We do, too.
I've done it a million times, yeah.
But you see where I'm saying in terms of that information starts getting out there from an education and information. And people, that's the one thing about YouTube. People go there for education information. They're sponging
YouTube is
an
interesting one. It's kind of the medium. What I'm saying is they're different mechanisms. Like the Outdoor Channel and all alike productions were built and produced for quality and accurate information. Social media is not that. It's purely a place for people to post. It's not, like you said, it's not any of that. And unfortunately, people seem to get more gratification out of, even if it's wrong or it's whatever, it's dirty, it's wrong stuff. That's where people go to feed like that dirty beast.
Yeah.
No doubt. That was my original point. Like it's a shotgun now. I mean, it's out of the gate and it's not coming back. And, we have to police ourselves, but it's difficult to do. All we can do is try and lead by example.
Yeah.
And to the point that you guys were making about censorship within those platforms, it's another reason we did DeerCast.
Yeah.
So that we have our own social media platform, because we have the news feed within there, and we have a block of writers. We do an article every single day. We do videos every day.
Yep.
And that's one of the reasons we had a really large appetite to do DeerCast, so that we had our own social media feed.
Well, and I think that's great because now you guys are vetting it, right? You have now created a platform that is putting that information out, accurate information that's been vetted by multiple people to say, hey, this is a good article, right? Or this is a good video. And now when it gets out there and it's consumed, the information in there is perceived correct, right? Or at least that it seems like it's accurate. And I think that's where, because I think it was a year ago that we ran into that one where the hunters, quote unquote, where the kids were stomping on like the doe's head or something. You remember that one got out of the gate. And
weren't they for Pennsylvania? Weren't those
Pennsylvania kids? Yeah. It was horrible.
Thanks for pointing that out,
Mark. My point is I remember it and I was like, oh my God.
And I mean, instantaneously as a hunter, I'm I'm ready to go find these guys and kick their ass, because that's the thing that gets out of the gate.
Whatever happened to those two? I thought I heard they were charged on animal abuse.
Slap on the wrist. Loss of hunting license for 5 years, slap on the wrist fines. Which is crazy. Crazy.
Yeah, should have been a little more severe.
Absolutely. But that's the stuff that gets out of the gate. So, go back to your app and the fact
what the hell's wrong with those kids that they would do that? Like I looked at that and go, that's
to be honest,
it's hard to watch.
That's social. They just crave attention. They think that they're going to put that on social media, which they did. They streamed it like live on Facebook or something. They're like, man, we're going to get all this attention. They thought it was funny. And to be honest, that's what society is fueling right now, right? We're fueling stupid acts like all the time.
That's just shock value. Again, that's the danger I think that comes with social media is it rewards this like shock value or controversial stuff, and so it forces people to do stuff like that.
It's crazy.
Shock and awe, man. Shock and awe.
I mean, it wasn't too long ago they did the Tide Pod challenge where kids were eating Tide wash or clothes detergent packs.
Did you get in on that?
It's like, are you freaking kidding me?
No.
What is wrong with these people? And the unfortunate thing is I look at my kids who are 6 and 10, right? And so they watch YouTube all the time, right? They're always watching hunting and fishing and stuff. And at half the time, I'll catch them out of my the peripheral, or I'll hear something and I'm like, that's not right, and I'll go over and see what they're watching. And it's it's a normal guy maybe planting a food plot or something, but he's talking about, planting his oats in July or something. I'm like, yeah,
you don't watch this. Turn that off.
Yeah, turn that off. Don't watch it. But it's, and that's the stuff that is just flying around out there. And again, it seems like every year we keep getting, to your point, Mark, that wider blast of just information. And it's like, how do you try to reel this thing back in?
It's not coming back, brother, until they block all of it off of all the social media pages, because it's it's the gun industry, right?
Which maybe we're not that far off from.
Right, exactly. Like I said, it's another reason we did our own feed.
So let's talk about a little bit more in the app. So obviously, if as long as people haven't been living under the rock, right, they know that you and Terry are really behind the 13 phases here, right?
Dwayne.
So if we think about that and we start to think about your app, the development around that, when you start to talk about deer activity and stuff, you're obviously looking at weather, but you're looking at deer behavior and a lot of other things when you start to think about this algorithm.
No doubt. Yeah. I think anybody would agree that weather affects every single thing on this planet. And when you really start diving into all the different variables, temperature, precip, pressure, wind speed, the differentiation or the delta in precip, the delta in wind speed, all these different things affect us and they affect the deer or whatever game animal you're after. So it was something that Terry and I had observed for years. And then we were really able to put a lot of pieces of the puzzle together whenever we started comparing our notes with trail photography back in 07, 08, when we first started taking a lot of photos. And that's when it really hit us. It'd be like, looking through your cards, say you go out and pick, this is before cellular signals and whatnot for cameras, but say you'd go out and sweep 20 cameras and you'd look at 2 weeks worth of information on 20 cameras. And then all of a sudden, there's one day, every single buck I had daylighted, it's like, what happened that day?
Mm-hmm.
And we started putting the pieces of the puzzle together with our own theories. And then we created an algorithm. We tested it and retested it and improved it. And that's what DeerCast's foundation is based upon, is that algorithm that predicts deer movement in your neck of the woods on an hour-by-hour basis based off of 13 different weather variables that change or are weighted differently through 13 different phases of the whitetail season. So not only is there day in and day out changes in movement as it pertains to daylight activity, but then that changes throughout the season. And I think the best way to understand that is look at whitetail's behavior on the opening day. When do you open in Pennsylvania?
October 1st, usually.
Okay, so look at October 1st, how weather influences them then, and look at January 1st, right? It's a totally big, broad spectrum. But what's happening in January is vastly different from October. Their coat is different. What they're eating is different. Where they're bedding is different. The leaves are off the trees. And through that period, all those 13 different phases, we've identified things that they do differently, and the weather affects them differently through them. I'll give you an example. Cloud cover early on in the season is something that increases daylight activity because it's a cooling factor, right? You're looking at October 1st, you can look at very warm temperatures. If you look at late season movement, cloud cover, it really subdues it because the sun's not out warming them up. So there's a big, 180 out example, but all of it's like that. So we put an algorithm together that changes with the phase and changes hour by hour in anyone's area that helps predict whether the deer are going to move, not so well, great, or incredibly well.
Very cool. Yeah. And I mean, I think, most people that, are actually, let's say, just not thrown out and hunting whenever they can. They're like systematically trying to pattern a deer, or systematically trying to make the hunts, be the most effective. We're watching those weather fronts and stuff, but we've all hunted weather fronts that, frankly, just didn't pan out, and it's probably because there's so many factors involved that one of those factors that you guys are talking about.
You still have to be in the right spot.
Yeah.
I mean, that's the main one. Yeah. I mean, all the factors can be exactly right, but if you're sitting in the wrong spot, you ain't going to see them.
Yeah. And I mean, we've all seen that.
You could sit in the best spot, not see a deer either if the factors are wrong.
100%.
It's a combination of the two.
For sure.
You got to make the right decisions. But man, you need some factors in there to make it happen. And that differs during the rut. It's not nearly as important because there's other influences that are, helping with daylight activity. Early season and late season, weather's everything, man.
Weather's everything.
Mark, I don't mean to put you on a spot with this, but can you rattle off as many of those 13 factors as you can remember? I'm curious what variables it's taking into effect. At least the heaviest weighted.
Well, they're all weighted differently per phase, and that's part of the the Kentucky Fried Chicken recipe or Coca-Cola recipe, but I rattled a bunch of them off there. As
temperature, wind direction, barometric
change
pressure,
the temperature.
Yeah.
Also, average high, the departure from average high.
Moon phase is one of them? That's what I was going to ask you.
Interesting.
It is. Precip, change in precip.
I think what's kind of neat about it is if we think about deer behavior across even October 1st to January 15th, right? We're only talking about 14, 15 weeks there, and the dramatic changes. And because we just talked about this this morning, we were saying, how a lot of people who are watching summer bucks, the moment they start shedding velvet, they're like, boom, they're moving to their fall ranges. When in actuality, usually you see those bachelor groups break up, but those deer are still kind of hanging in that summer range. Whereas as you get further along into September, early October, then you kind of see those fall ranges start to really happen. So people kind of jump at the change that they see, and they're like, okay, boom, there's now a big change. These deer moved from summer to fall ranges, when there's other changes in between those big, drastic moves and differences happening. And I would assume that's kind of what you guys are seeing there in those 13 phases, essentially.
Oh, no doubt. I mean, look at a deer's behavior we opened September 15th in Missouri. So we really see that feed pattern develop. And then come October, things are changing. Oftentimes it's not daily, it's hourly. If you look at the difference in a deer's posture and the way they move around October 25th through November 1st, giant change. And that's in 5 or 6 days. And then it changes again around the 5th or 6th. And then it changes again around the 9th or 10th, as they're leading into that bell curve. A lot of our phases follow that bell curve of peak estrus. If peak estrus is roughly November 14th, I don't know what it is there where you guys are at.
Yeah,
we're about 13th to 14th of November. Well, that ramp up and then that ramp down, there's a bunch of changes that are occurring. So that's why we did the show 13, and then DeerCast followed that with our 13 different weather variables to predict movement through the phases.
Do you think, based on some of that data that you're looking at from the phases as well as kind of those factors affecting it, do you think you have a better opportunity to kill a mature buck in the early and late season on more patternable things than that middle part where the rut is kind of the wild card?
It depends what your situation is or where you're hunting. Every farm has its own DNA, and I have farms specifically that they're only good up till about October 15th, and they're horrible after that. So if I was answering that question based on that, I would say, up through October 15th is the best time to kill a big buck. However, I have other farms that turn on during the rut and haven't been that great up until that point. So it really depends on each farm's DNA and when it's best for you. And you learn that through time. I always say it takes 3 or 4 years to really understand a farm's DNA and figure out the optimum times to be in there and take advantage of deer movement.
So asking for a friend here, what do you do with those farms that hunt good up through October 15th? I mean, other than the obvious answers, hunt them up to October 15th and I stop hunting them.
Good answer. I hunt them up to October 15th.
It's my family farm, Mark, is what I'm asking you about. It's a summer piece of ground. We have them all through the summer.
It's 1,000
October
acres.
15th shuts off.
Yeah.
It's 1,000 acres.
Yep.
Yeah, it's a big farm. Is it open? Is there a lot of north face on it? What's the cover like? It's
pretty open. A lot of old pasture ground. We've done a lot of TSI since. We're still lacking cover generally. There's food year round because of the TSI and the surrounding ag. We've supplemented with food plots, and we do have deer. I mean, there's deer that rut on the property. It's 1,000 acres. Of course there is. But it certainly seems to shut right off, around that mid-October part.
Yeah. So one of the things I do then is you understand your farm's DNA. I try to optimize it in terms of my hunting success for that period that they're there.
Yeah.
So I plant stuff that really isn't going to attract them in December because I've already said, you know what, they're not going to be here in December. So I'm planting stuff that is really good during the early season. Alfalfa, clover, deer radishes. Those are the things that I would focus on, and I'm going to tuck it as close to that bedroom as I can find.
Interesting. See, because we've had conversations, Mark, with land managers and stuff that basically, I mean, Jeff Sturgis is the main one. Who are you familiar with Jeff?
I am. Yep,
okay,
from Minnesota.
Yep. So Jeff is a big advocate of, being a herd influencer. That's kind of his methodology towards managing properties. And that basically means optimizing your property for those fall months, no matter what, no matter how it sets up. And so his diagnosis of my farm, not to put words in his mouth, but it's something that I've heard, I've kind of listened to, is he would say, you need cover, in order for that farm to hunt better throughout the season and for you to be a herd influencer, you need cover. So, and warm season grasses is his.
That was why my question, I said, how much north face versus south face? Sometimes you can't create enough cover. If there's too much north face, it's almost impossible to create. Unless it depends on the economic model of the farm as well. Like it's a much broader subject than we can have here. Sure. Like I'd have to come look at the farm. Like, is it a working cattle farm? Is it tillable? Is it CRP? Like if you just had a blank slate and said, I can do with it what I want, then I would go in there and plant warm season grasses on every open acre and food on the ridge tops and TSI all the timber and try to create as many pocket bedrooms on that south facing stuff as I possibly could. Add water, food, water, cover. But if it's a family farm that's a working,
it's not. It's deer. It's a rec farm.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Stealth Cam.
Dude, where would we be without our cell cams?
I would definitely be divorced at this point.
Yeah, I hear that.
I mean, the fact is I spent more time checking cameras than I actually did hunting prior to cell cameras. Now, at least, my wife can enjoy me being in the comfort of my own home, buried in my phone, checking those pictures.
Yeah, 100%. And dude, when it comes to trail cameras and definitely cell cameras, reliability is, I think, the number one thing that we're looking for. Stealth Cam just has a long reputation of reliable cameras, and ultimately that is the most important thing to us. They have to work.
In terms of reliability, there's not a better camera on the market than Stealth Cam, whether you're talking about the Fusion X, the Reactor, or the DS4K Transmit. And most of them are under $200.
Stealthcam.com. Check them out. So a little bit of static there, but basically you bought a farm very comparable to mine. You put a lot of warm season grasses on it. So here's the micro discussion.
And food.
Here's the, I guess, micro discussion that in our allotted time here we can have is, so my strategy to that has been maybe more long term, not that warm season grass isn't, but this is just kind of the path that I've chosen here. So farm's about 1,000 acres. 40% of it is timbered, 50% of it is ag, co-op. The remaining 10% is I have some leftover pasture. Cool season grasses, stuff that by mid-October is flat on the ground. I've TSI'd a lot of the timber already. My plan for that remaining 10% of leftover pasture, and at some point, some of the existing ag would be to, practice some early successional habitat management in the form of spraying, burning, and burning around, rather than planting something. And that's come from kind of the methodology of like a Craig Harper, from Whitetail Properties, who instead of saying, hey, plant switchgrass, he would say, let it grow.
Mm-hmm. In those exact words.
Which is another way to do it, I personally just enjoy the switchgrass because I can control height. Deer make their living from 5 feet below. Mm-hmm. And I went with 4 different grasses that were all at least 5 foot tall. And deer just love security. So mm-hmm. I know that blanket of security, that 600 acres that blanketed all of those draws, it ended up being the most daylight activity farm I've ever had, because literally all 800 acres was cover, and most of it was really thick cover. They would go anywhere during the daylight. The oldest, biggest of bucks, you could see them on any plot at any time of the day. It was literally the most amazing experience.
Wow.
That's cool.
So
that's encouraging. Yeah, I mean, I think ours has that ability. We've got, the genetics out there are phenomenal. We have a lot of big deer. Our struggle is getting them, to 4-year-old or older. Go ahead.
That and the other reason I did that, I did not want any legumes growing in certain areas. I wanted to control the food source. So if you do what you're talking about, you're going to have a lot of legumes in a lot of different areas, and not as big of a need for those deer to travel to a certain food source. So yeah, in my theory, that's what I wanted.
So what do you say to the guy? Because that's one of the reasons that I am considering doing that, is a lot of guys that talk about buck bedding areas say it has to have food in it. Sturgis would be one of those guys that says you can't just plant switchgrass because the bucks won't bed in it. There's no food in there.
Well, but I know where they're going to bed, and then I know where they're going to feed. So it really depends on the overall blank chalkboard, if you will. If you've got 1,000 acres, you could do a lot with that. You said how much of it was timber? 50%?
40.
40? Yeah, bunch of timber. I mean, that's awesome. I was a little bit less than that. So I think you can create a lot of that food within the bedroom, and not as much, in the travel areas. That's what they used mine for. They were just getting from point A to point B through that grass, but they would do it at all hours of the day. Yeah. I mean, it's incredible.
I think that's probably where it comes down to, that situational thing where, if you're in big timber, and somebody comes in and clear cuts that big timber, in the next 2 to 3 years, you've got tons of food, you got tons of cover, that big buck's hanging in that clear cut because that is the most secure and he's got food. When you start talking about these open pasture ag areas, if you've got dedicated bedding and the food source is close by, I don't think it's as dramatic that you need food in the bed because there's plenty of food around him in a very short distance. Sure. I think those big timber deer are catered to where they need food and cover in the same spot because they don't want to have to travel a mile every night to go back and forth from their bed.
I guess that would put it to rest for me. I guess, Mark, is in your experience in those big CRP type of area or strictly switchgrass fields, are you seeing big bucks bed in the heart of those?
Yes.
You are?
Sure. Yeah.
Case closed.
It makes sense. I would think so too. If you asked me 2 years ago, I'd have said, yeah, absolutely. Yeah. Of course they're in there. But then I've had guys telling me, well, no, they won't bed in it. They'll only bed on the edge, or you have to plant little food plots kind of throughout it. And I'm like, oh, well, that's pretty complicated now.
I've seen them over every inch of it. Yeah. Absolutely.
And then how are you planning your access there?
Yeah.
How are you planning your access there on that, Mark, in terms of, are you then placing your food in the places that you then have the best access to get into to hunt?
Yeah, so I built it on a couple different phases. Or really, I had some early season stuff in the plan. I had late season destination fields, and then I had during the rut, transitional stuff. So it was really a 3-part process based on the different times of the year. So, and I set all that up on the map ahead of time, and I kind of built it in reverse because a lot of the cover of this farm currently, before I added the grass, was all kind of down the center with some arms leading out of it. It was a mile-long draw and then a bunch of fingers coming off of it.
Yep.
So rather than putting the food close to it, I put the food way out in the perimeters and made them come out of there in the evenings and then back there in the mornings. And then I had selective areas picking them off on the way to the food in the afternoons or back to the bed of a morning. So I kind of laid it all out ahead of time, and it worked like a charm on that one. But that's the way that farm laid out. It was a pretty cool farm.
So
Cool.
yeah, I mean, I think
the more we talk to guys like you, Mark, the more I realize, like, man, I need somebody to get my farm and tell me what the frick I'm doing here.
Well, I think the hard part is we get, so Jared and I hunt Ohio. We've got Kentucky farm. We've got Pennsylvania. We start getting blinders
going back
onto
to Kansas
this thing.
this year.
Yeah, we're going back to Kansas this year.
Yeah.
We start getting blinders on some of our farms that we own and hunt, just because like we're on it so much, and then we start overthinking it, and it's like, I mean,
there's other factors too, like family hunts that we have friends.
Yep.
There's pressure that we can't control, and which happens. That's part of it. I'm sure.
It's part of it. Yeah,
it is, and that's one of the biggest things that every hunter faces is that pressure. That'll change a farm's DNA really quickly. That's the one thing about our stuff. Like, one of the best pieces of advice we always give is just stay out, just get out, get off the farm. We talk about it all the time. Get it set up, stay out. Get your food plots in place, get out. Even before we had cell cams, like, we would put our trail cameras more from an inventory standpoint where we could get to them on the right wind. We would never go down within a draw and go check the damn thing. We would put it there. I'd leave it there all year, so I'm scouting for the following year, but I would never go check it. I think people underestimate how often they spook deer, don't know they spook the deer, and then their intrusion is being reacted upon by the deer, and you never knew it. That's the thing about whitetails. They almost never let you know that they found you. They 100%. Almost never do.
They just disappear.
Man, we talk about that all the time, and thinking about, because I was hunting Ohio last year, a giant in Columbus area, and had this, I don't know, it's probably 100.
A giant. No, a legitimate, typical 200.
Yeah, typical. It was a giant. And had this probably 145, 150 8-point, which was mature, come up downwind behind me. And it's one of those deer that, had the wind been a little different, I would have never seen him, right? He would have hit my wind, turned around and hightailed. But just the way he came in, I watched him kind of coming in contact with my wind. And you watch those observations, and it instantly clicks to say, man, how many times am I in the timber and that deer gets downwind of me and I never even know he's there?
All the time. If you ever watch our stuff, we're almost never in the timber anymore. Yeah. I don't know if you ever noticed that. We're always out on the edge where we've got a certain access in and out. And we never go in that bedroom. Almost never.
Interesting. Are you guys, when you're looking at that from, and keeping in mind some of that's Midwest stuff versus some of the bigger timber that we might be hunting out east, but when you start to think about those opportunities, I mean, at some point, do you say we need to press into it, or are you just being patient enough to sit on those edges?
Well, it goes again with timing. Like, once it comes to the rut where you get away with a little bit more, in other words, bumping a buck on November the 6th is not the same as bumping him on October the 6th, right? So then all of a sudden I'm going to cheat in there, but I'm going to spend the day more than likely. I don't want to go in and out a lot.
Right.
And I'll have exact, access routes in and out. But most of the stuff we're just killing right on the edge of the bedroom. Like, if you ever watch our stuff, there'll be timber and cover closed, really nasty stuff with a food plot right in their face with a great access to it and in and out. And that's where we're killing most of our giants. It really often comes down to access. If we don't have good access, we just don't hunt them there.
What does that look like, Mark, during like peak rut activity? Because I think most of us, when we think like a rut spot, it's in the woods. It's a funnel. It's a combination of ditches coming together or something like that. Is that the case for you, or are you guys still out on the edges in box blinds essentially?
No, that is when we'll push in a little bit more. A little bit more tighter cover. But I can't remember the last good deer I killed during the rut. I killed a decent one with a rifle last year in Missouri, but the rest of those big deer I did kill Bucktober on November the 9th and got.
I watched that one. I watched that one this morning, Mark, just by chance.
Yeah. But he was following a doe, and we got real fortunate. And that was a pinch point. That was that same farm I was telling you about with all the grass.
Yeah.
And I literally found his bedroom the year before, putting a camera in that draw because I had his sheds. And I put that camera in there. I was like, I wonder if he's here. And he daylighted almost every other day. And I'm like, I got him. I was like, as soon as I checked that camera, I checked it like in January. I was like, if he's alive, I'll kill him next year because I found his bedroom. Yeah. But I had like 10 or 12 different cameras out, but that's the one he was on every day. And I'm like, he's dead. Yeah. And then I had a perfect access in on a south wind. And I hunted it every single south because there was no way he was going to catch us. And then I hunted it like 5 out of 7 days because, like everybody else in the Midwest was like, the weather's warm, it's terrible. And I'm like, this is exactly what I need to kill him. So I just kept hunting it and then killed him that morning.
Wow.
I knew where he was bedding. Like he was doomed the moment I looked at that card because I found his bedroom.
We just said that this morning.
Bedroom, if you can find his bedroom, you can kill every single buck, everyone.
See? I just said that this morning. Well, it's not like I came up with it, but yeah. And it's no mistake when you find it too. It's like, it's obvious. Here he is. Here's all these beds. Here's all this sign. He's right here.
Well, and I think that's why we spend so much time in December and January looking for those kind of things.
But it wasn't. That's not how I found it. I put a camera there in like early October. I slowed it way down. I put lithiums in it. I wanted it to last to the end of the year, and I never went and checked it. And I do that in a lot of places on my farms when I have a gut feeling. I'll sneak in there during a rain or just before a rain, put a camera out, and I leave it there the whole year. And then I don't go check it. And I'm looking for buck bedrooms when I'm doing that. Yeah. And when I find them, then the next year I'm going to park the right product right next to him in terms of food plot and kill that sucker.
And I assume you guys are doing that with cell cams now, right?
To some degree, it depends if you have service or not. Sometimes you're limited by service. But oftentimes I'll just put cameras out on a whim just to see how they do.
Yeah. I mean, that would be my thing if I'm going to go, because we've got some of those spots that, we could definitely just let them sit and take pictures of. But if you put a cell cam in there and it's struggling for signal, the thing's dead in 30 days. It doesn't matter what you put in it.
Sucks it right down. Reconyx has got one now that you can put the solar panel on, and that lasts for years. It's really good. But more often than not, I got my solar cams or my cell cams on targets for that year. Mm-hmm. But when I'm placing like just a standard Reconyx camera out, I'm on a 3-year-old or a 4-year-old, and I'm looking 2 or 3 years down the road for when he's mature. So I'm way out in front of those bucks when I'm looking for their bedrooms.
Love that. Mark, how are you using your cell cams nowadays to hunt? Because, I mean, Jared and I are big proponents of cell cams. We use them in a lot of our absentee lands that we have, but you get a lot of people saying that they don't think they're fair or whatever. I mean, are you using them as much real-time information as possible, or and I say that mainly because I know I overhunt them sometimes, thinking like
MRI. See,
MRI. Yeah, see, I'm not if I'm not getting that buck on camera, I'm not hunting that area. He's obviously there. It's just I didn't get his picture, type of thing.
Yeah, I try to have a balance between the way I used to hunt before cell cams and the way I hunt now. Yep. So I would just try to find a buck general area, and then I wanted to be the camera, because oftentimes by the time you get the picture, you're done.
Yeah, right? It's over.
He's already through there and he's late. Depending on the time of the year. If it's early part of the season though, and you get his picture and he's not moving very far, that first 12 days of October, those bucks are pretty close to their bedroom every single day. It's food bed. And then slowly but surely they start to expand just a little bit. And then they might, go to a different range or something like that. But if you could catch them during that early part, chances are he's pretty close to you that night. So I think putting one to bed or roosting him, if you will, is a great way to kill one. Like if you can catch him on a plot that night or close to daylight, man, he's going to be right there. Yeah. He should be. But that comes back into the weather as well. What weather is occurring from the time you got that picture till the time you go hunt that night? Is it a beautiful high pressure day after a cold front? So in other words, that 5 a.m. picture may not mean very much, because he might have walked another 600-700 yards feeding on acorns because the weather was so pretty. However, was it a low pressure day? Chances are he bedded his butt 100 yards from where you got that picture, because none of the deer are moving. So you have to kind of use that in your overall process of how you make that decision. Look at the weather that you're dealing with and how far you think he moved from where that camera is that day.
Have you ever put a cell camera on a buck's bed and killed him, knowing he was in that bed, and so you went and hunted the spot that you thought he would come to from there?
Not what you would call the bed, but close to it, where I felt like he was going into bed. I just don't go in my sanctuaries. Yeah. Almost never. There's certain places I won't even shed hunt.
Really?
Yep.
Wow. Just for the purpose of not wanting to bump them out of there.
Intrusion, man. They don't forget whether their antlers are on their head or not. They do not forget your mistakes.
Isn't that crazy?
Yep.
I wonder if that changes.
People underestimate them. They underestimate the power of a deer's intuition and his ability to stay alive. They're really good at living.
That's because they're watching Ben Rising call them pine goats.
Goats that live in the woods. Yeah. I wonder if
I am an absolute freak about entering the farm, man. There's certain things I'll only do on a tractor. There's certain places I just won't go till it's the middle of the night. I mean, I'm a freak about intrusion.
And I mean,
understandably too.
I mean, it definitely seems like in most places, that human pressure is the number one killer of a big buck. I mean, that will either get you to kill the buck or it will get that buck killed because he gets kicked off your place.
Do you think that changes the further east that you go? Because I mean, dude, on my farm in eastern central Ohio, and I would bet that on a lot of the surrounding farms, like there's not a single inch of that farm that hasn't been walked on by us or a neighbor or whoever at some point or another. Whereas in the Midwest, and I mean, we're familiar with Kansas, surely there are pieces of private property that haven't been on in years. And so the pressure difference is there for sure.
No doubt. Do I think it differs? So your question is, do I think it differs based on the amount of pressure? Absolutely. But if you put that same amount of pressure on a deer that I'm hunting, it's going to make him that much tougher, and I have that in many of our cases because I've switched from a large farm strategy to a multitude of smaller satellite farms. And I did that to kind of combat what we were up against with EHD so frequently. We got smoked in 98. We got smoked again in 08. We got smoked in 12, smoked in 13, go in, lose 60, 70% of your buck herd.
Wow.
And EHD is very pockety. So I started buying farms in different pockets of deer herds. So going into this fall, I'll probably be hunting 10 different herds, maybe 12, because I have a 40 here and 80 there. And, so I want my small little slice to be the least amount of pressure in that area, So
I like that strategy
have a
too,
lot
Mark.
of sanctuaries with food next to the sanctuary and no pressure on that area.
I like that strategy too. Well, and so mine, not for EHD, we don't have as much of that out here, but I probably in a different way that you did it, but I've employed the same strategy just because of the pressure that we could put on our family farm. It's hunted by myself, my dad, friends of ours. There's 6-7 guys that hunt, this 1,000 acres that truly hunts like 300 acres. So I've gone out and gotten permission on 2 or 3 other farms in the surrounding area, and I killed my first booner on a surrounding farm this past year. And it's one of those deals that we don't ever go on it. And, and that's working out.
I bet that felt good seeing him come, didn't it?
Oh, dude. Yeah. Yes. It was pretty awesome.
How far was your shot?
Like 7 yards.
Oh,
yeah. He
good.
Oh yeah, smoked him. I was like, it was November 2nd in the afternoon. So there's 2 farms. Jed Coldwell is a private timber forestry consultant in the area, and I've had a friendship with him for maybe 10 years now. And, he and I have just talked over the years, and I've just sharing my frustrations with my farm with him. And he has a big family farm right there, not far from us. And he's been buying up smaller tracts of ground kind of over the past couple of years. And so eventually he was like, tell you what, dude, he's like, why don't you come out, just help me plant food plots, run cameras. And, we have kind of a partnership on these other farms that he owns. And I get to hunt them as a result of that. And so he bought this farm, I think 3 years? Right before last season, earlier in the year, I guess. And we threw cameras up on it. And, I don't know, this whole thing is kind of new to me. It's new property. I was like, well, let's put mineral out on it. Let's see what it looks like. And the whole thing is just a giant thicket. It's like a 160-acre thicket, and it's got a couple openings with good road access that Jed put in when he first bought it. And so we planted food plots in each of those things, and we ran cameras throughout the summer and got a picture of like one decent buck midsummer. But I mean, it was nothing. It was dry. And it was like August, September, October. These months are rolling by.
Thickets always are. They're always dry.
Not getting anything. Nothing.
All of a sudden, boom.
And I couldn't believe it. I'm like, how is there nothing here? I was getting frustrated because I had started hunting, my farm and some of the other farms, and we hadn't touched this one yet because there's nothing to hunt, so we think. And I went in there on November 1st, and so in Ohio you can bait. I put a corn pile out, and I was like, I got to see what we got here. And I put a stand up on a whim. I was like, man, it's a great spot. I got a cell cam here. I put a corn out. Like 2-3 hours later, I had about 160-inch, mainframe 4 or 5-year-old 10-point come in. I was like, boom, there we go. I'm going back tomorrow for that deer. And so I didn't hunt there in the morning, and the wind wasn't right for it. I went back in like maybe 2:30, 3:30 the following afternoon, And about an hour later, he popped right out of just the thicket and walked right across the food plot directly to me and was going to cut up this trail. And I smoked him right there in front of me.
Outstanding, man. Congratulations. That's good stuff.
And the best part about that, Mark, is so while I'm not hunting my family farm, I still have the camp. So I still have my dad,
the camaraderie,
our guys that are hunting the family farm. My wife was, staying with us up there. And so I even though I'm not hunting the family farm per se, it's like I have the family the camp atmosphere that we all want out of deer camp while getting to go 5 miles down the road and kill the booner that I'm after. So it's pretty cool.
That is cool. That's awesome.
Thanks, man.
We are about 75 miles from north to south and about 35, 40 miles from east to west and all the different satellite farms that I either own or lease. So the benefit to that is you're hunting a lot of herds. The downside is it is a major pain in the rear to get it all planted. I mean, it's a nightmare.
Yeah, I bet. I can't even imagine. Yeah, well, and I mean that's the critical time frame is like, you're playing the rain, you're trying to make sure you got the time to get out there, and
that's my biggest struggle. Man. I have one farm that's only 2 hours away, and I can't find the time to plant this, warm season grasses, the structure that we're talking about.
Yeah, it's priorities.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, there's three of us, so it's myself, Wade, and Perry, and I mean we're working overtime every single week trying to get stuff done, but it pays off in the fall.
It does. Yeah, I mean that's the big thing, and I think that there's a lot of people that are listening to this and they'll say, well, I've got one property and I've got a family and like they want to enjoy it. I mean, none of us are saying you can't enjoy that property. You just have to be realistic about what the outcome's going to be. I mean, if you're going to be hiking on your property every weekend, like that's fine. Just know that that's probably going to lay a little bit of a damper on a mature buck calling that place home for a long period of time.
Yeah, certainly everybody has their own perspective of what they want out of a piece of ground or what they want out of the fall, and time's limited, and it just depends what you want back out of it. But you can't. There's certain things that I think it's input output really. If you do the right things, you can expect a certain level of success. However, if you say, well, that won't hurt them, the more you say that, the worse it's going to be in terms of outcome. It really is. And I hear that all the time. Well, that won't bother him. That won't bother him.
Yeah. Sound familiar?
It is the direct opposite. That bothers them.
Yeah.
That hurts them. That's what I say to myself every day. That's going to bother them. No matter what you do, you are making an effect on that deer.
Yeah.
So, Mark, as we kind of approach this upcoming season, at what point do you try to, quote, stay out of there? I mean, because obviously, like, we're here in the middle of July. Like, we're going to be starting to plant brassicas and stuff here in not too long. We're going to be hanging sets and cameras. At what point do you say, I don't want to be in there if I don't have to?
About mid-August where we really try to shut her down. Once our food plots are in, we're out generally, unless there's a major issue that's gone on. So we're fairly busy right now trying to get stuff taken care of. But we also recognize which farms are holding deer right now and which ones aren't. And we're staying out of those. There's some farms like the one you were talking about, the brushy one there, you can probably go in there and do what you wanted up till they show up, but once they show, don't run them out of that.
Don't run them out.
Yeah.
Crazy, man.
Very cool. Well, it's nice to have a spot like that, though, because it's one of them deals, and it's given me a bit more, hopefully not in a bad way, but I'm kind of at peace knowing, like, man, that spot's going to be good again this year. I know we can go back there, and either Jed or I will be able to. We had two, I'm going to say mid-50s, mid-150 3-year-olds last year, and out here we're shooting 4-year-olds.
Yeah.
So those guys are in trouble.
Yeah.
In fact, I just got a muddy box blind getting ordered or delivered next Tuesday that we're going to put in on that plot that those 3-year-olds were on.
Beauty.
I tell you what, those box blinds are game changers. We get a lot of pushback about them, but boy, it really helps control your scent within those things. Something we've done to help with that as we seal where the roof comes on to the sides and where the floor is, we'll caulk all those or fill those seams with the blow-in insulation or the insulation that expands,
Oh, yeah.
And it really does help. And then we try to hunt with the windows closed.
Yep.
We use an anti-fog on the inside, and then we don't open until it's time to shoot generally.
Really?
So.
Yeah, man. I love them. I mean, for me, I've got a 6 and a 10-year-old, so we're able to get away with so much more movement and, just getting into position and everything like that. And as we get further into like November and December, I mean, they wouldn't be able to sit out there in 0 degrees, so it's just It gets them more experience out there to watch deer. And I mean, they're able to watch deer that, they have no idea we're in there at 2 feet, and really observe the behavior of these deer and stuff. I mean, it's changed everything.
Well, one thing I think is a good tip for anybody that hasn't hunted in a box blind and is about to, just the overall, ergonomics of getting shot out of those windows. That's a whole different ball game right there. So make sure you take the time to practice out of that box blind, because your natural thing, if you're standing there at full draw and you sit down, your front arm's going to come up because of your posture relaxes a little bit. And most people will shoot high from a shooting position if they haven't focused on getting on top of their anchors. So make sure you practice that.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Man,
I noticed this motion here. Mark, are you still are you shooting a wrist trigger?
Yep. Always have.
Always have? Dude,
I
know we don't have time for the full conversation here, but I was dealing with target panic real bad. I missed a big buck in Kansas a couple of years ago that eventually forced me to that was the straw that broke the camel's back for me. So I switched to
Carter.
Forrest Carter is one of the family members that has Carter releases, and ran into him at ATA one year and was like, dude, just what can I do here? Like my life is ruined basically. And he hooked me up with a Carter Wise Choice, and I went through a whole kind of reprogramming to where I was just shooting a trainer for several months over the winter, reintroduced like blind bailing, and eventually started, shooting arrows again at a target. And it wasn't the release alone or that process alone, but I think the two combined is like, dude, it's
reset,
completely gone. And so anybody that's got target panic, there is hope.
I'm glad you should do a whole show just on that, because there's a lot of people out there.
We have.
What are you talking about?
Yeah, exactly. Well, listen, Mark, we know you're on vacation, man. We appreciate you taking time with us today. So I know we talked kind of a little bit on it, but pre-podcast, you said, so the new app is out as of last week, which would have been around the 1st of July, this way or sometime later July. I guess, what are the options for people looking to download the app? Is there multiple plans, or how does that all work?
Yeah, there's exactly what we had last year. There's always this free version. This year, the free version has a map in it.
Okay.
There's also the pro version, which is $10 a year, and the elite version, which is $20 a year. The elite version will give you, 10 days of DeerCast, DeerCast track, those types of things. But we've increased it, and we've added maps in general to DeerCast. We now have an Elite Plus, and then we have an Unlimited. Unlimited is $75 a year. Elite Plus is $50 a year. And what that comes with is one state's parcel data. And then the Unlimited comes with all states' parcel data. And then both of those versions, either the $50 or the $75 version, you're going to get wind check. You're going to get wind check through 5 days. You're going to get a 14-day DeerCast. You're going to have radar. You're going to have rain station. You have area. You have plot. You have distance, you have path tracking, literally every single thing as a whitetail hunter, the ones that we love using the most, and then some features that just aren't out there yet are in there. It's the one thing you'll notice about DeerCast and our mapping solutions and our tools. They are built directly focused at the whitetail deer hunter. There are some other map solutions out there that are just brilliantly put together, and I love a lot of their features. If you look at DeerCast, you'll see that there was some thought from some whitetail guys, myself, Terry, Matt, the whole Drury Outdoors team, that went into all of these tools and features. That rain station and what precip means, wind, how it changes, the cone, how it changes when it goes to different speeds. Like, I don't know if you saw that in that prezo I sent you. Like, you can look at it through 5 days and go, oh, there's the direction, but look what it's doing in terms of it's much wider this day than it is this day. That's the day I need to go. There's optimal wind speeds and those types of things. So we really try to help you understand how the environment affects you. DeerCast, the predictive model, really talks about how the environment and how weather is affecting a deer's daylight activity. Well, all of those same things affect you and your decisions. And this is kind of the tool book to take you out there and help you make better decisions along the way.
Perfect, awesome. Man. Very cool. Well, we're excited to use it this year. And again, we appreciate you coming on, man. We taking some time out of your vacation. Appreciate your mom stopping by.
That's an honor, man. Dude, you're like, one of the bigger guests that we've had on.
We've been saying, we're like, we've had Ben on, we've had Winky on, and we're like, man, we got to get Drury on here at some point. I mean, we're whitetail guys by heart. It doesn't, we love hunting mule deer. We love going out and hunting turkey. I mean, but ultimately, we're through and through whitetail guys. I mean, when it comes to season, that's where our minds are, the whole time. So,
well, those are great guys to be in the company of, and you guys are great to be in the company of. You guys have a great show, and I appreciate you having me on there. And I don't know if it's possible, but do you do more? Like, do these are visual offerings, or most of it on like audio?
So all of these will go on YouTube, and they'll go on video part for Spotify as well. And then we've got audio Spotify, we've got audio, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcasts, all those. So we do both versions. This will be fully produced as well.
Would it be possible just at the tail end of this to create a link or just add the audio in from that presentation I sent you? That way, if somebody cared to listen to the features,
100%.
It's in there. Just put it at the end of the podcast. They can continue to listen or jump off. But we really did go above and beyond with that offering.
Yeah, we can sew that video right in, right, Nick? So we should be able to sew that video right on there too.
I'm glad the show's working out for you guys. And did Ben say that you had like a fertilizer company or something?
Yeah, so I've got DeerGro. I own 44% of the DeerGro food plot spray aspect of things.
What is it? What's it do?
So it's there's two different products. You've got DeerGro Plot Start, which is more of your lime alternative for calcium additives to soils and stuff.
Yep.
And then the Plot Boost product is more focused on the biological component of the soil, really kind of boosting that up, reducing your need for fertilizer, making the plants more efficient at using the nutrients in the soil.
Awesome. Good for you.
Yeah. So we're based out of southern Missouri. So out of Doniphan is where our main offices down there.
Very good. Is it doing okay for you?
Yeah, man, it's been great. We've been cranking, and I'm a lifetime food plot guy, so anything that I can do to get into some of these plots and make them grow more efficient, and it's been a really cool thing. The guys, the brothers who have been involved with me for 9 years now on DeerGro, they've been in the agricultural business for 35 years as a family down there. So farmers are willing to use it and get a return on investment. Us deer guys are as well.
Right on, man. Well, congratulations and continued success with it. I hope it does well for you.
Well, I appreciate it, Mark. Well, thanks so much, man. We'll let you get back to vacation.
Thank you. I appreciate you guys having me on.
The HUNTR Podcast is brought to you by Hoyt Archery.
Dude, where would we be without our Hoyt bows?
Probably shooting crossbows.
or a Matthews, yeah.
One and the same.
Yeah.
But in all seriousness, we love being Hoyt guys because you stand out. When you're in this room full of other people that shoot these other types of bows, I feel like the Hoyt guys just stick out.
Dude, it's just a legit bow. I mean, especially that carbon riser, man. I mean, I know that they've got several other aluminum lines as well, but for me, I'm shooting that RX5 in the carbon model. They've since come out with the RX7, and I can't tell you how much I love being a Hoyt guy amongst a sea full of Matthews guys. So we're out there, I think, proving them wrong, shooting 80 pounds and killing stuff.
Hey, man, if you want to get serious, get Hoyt. And Mark Drury.
Yeah.
Cool.
Very
really
cool, man.
Yeah, it's just when you go back and look, it's funny that that video that we'll probably play here at the end. They threw some classic footage of him and Terry in there.
Some oldies.
Oh, so awesome! Probably early '90s type stuff. Killing probably big 4-year-olds in Iowa and stuff. And
I watched some the other day, dude, where they're killing not as big a deer, and I was like, huh, interesting.
Well, man. He's sitting there, and it's cool to get Mark on. I mean, we really do appreciate him coming. But you start hearing him talk about the vetting process, and I mean, dude, we went on. I don't know how many podcasts ago we went on a rant about that.
Yeah, because
it is something that I think all of us who are in the industry, we appreciate the amount of content that's being produced about hunting and about wildlife management. At the same time, we also are very concerned with the fact that we know that there's content being produced that is not right. That's the best way to say it. It's not right. And we're not saying we are not for censorship, obviously. I mean, it's crazy the fact that these guys who are, I think, very clean in their productions are getting slapped by these social media companies for, basically red flags. But to the level of how, and we'd love to say that the public can vet and understand and promote things like Drury's or Jeff Sturgis or Bill Winke or Don Higgins to the top because those guys are right, but that's not always the case.
It's not possible though, dude. I mean, the Outdoor Channel that's your premium vetting source. I've seen tons of guys kill 3-year-old bucks that said it's 10-year-old bucks, 5-year-old bucks.
On Outdoor Channel,
it's wrong. Yeah,
100%.
Yeah, that's the problem with.
I will say he was right on magazines, because magazines are the one that back in the day.
There's lots of wrong shit in magazines too.
Yeah, but back in the day, there was a pretty solid vetting source for those, because the competition was so high to write in those.
Agreed.
Things. So when Bill Winke put out an article.
Yes, but if you go back and read them now, there's stuff that even Bill will say, that was wrong.
Yeah, it was wrong.
It wasn't right.
It wasn't accurate.
We thought it was right.
At the time, yeah. Yeah, but based on our knowledge now, not right.
And so I agree with you in that, man, it would be great for only the correct information to get published. But it's not possible.
Not possible.
Not possible.
And I think you just have to take it for a grain of salt. When you get out there and you start looking at this stuff, pretty quickly, seems like this guy knows what we're talking about. People listen to this. Hey, maybe Jeremy and Jared know what the hell they're talking about. Mm-hmm. Maybe we don't. We're pretty transparent.
Well, dude,
we
you
don't.
just have to realize people are wrong all the time, even, and in some cases, especially the authorities on issues. Mm-hmm. I mean, dude, look at anything. Like most recently, you got Fauci is that's who's telling us what to do with COVID.
And the video's been taken down.
I mean, and there you go. I mean, but apply it to anything.
I know. Any news central. Guns are the problem.
Authorities are wrong all the time.
And taken down again.
Authorities are wrong all the time. And while you need to respect authority, and they're there for a reason, there should be healthy questioning.
And this is where, again, it's so, and I can't even put myself close to being in the position that Mark was, as him and Terry kind of went through this whole process of, filming shows and getting those shows vetted to get on a network for this stuff. But think about the amount of just trash that is just put out there from all forms of media. I'm not just talking about outdoor industry, all forms of media that we're hit with daily, to the point where it's per what I said this morning, you're like, I don't even watch the news, because it's just so much junk and trash just thrown at you. You're like, why would I watch this? Mm-hmm. At one point in time, everybody watched the news. The thing you did not miss in a day was the evening news.
Yeah.
It was your entire source of the accurate information for what the world was doing. To the point now, there's so much being thrown at it. It's no.
Well, even that, though, and I mean, we could go down a rabbit hole with this. Let's not for right now.
Sure.
But, dude, the evening news promoted a lot of stories that, in hindsight, were wrong. I mean, think of any conspiracy. What I mean? It's just unknowns. How did JFK get killed?
Area 51.
What are the true Area 51? UFOs. Drugs, promotions, Nixon campaigns, all these things that now we're like, oh. It wasn't quite right, It was campaign. It was propaganda.
So do you think we're smarter now about it?
About what?
We're more aware that at that time, newspapers and television controlled the information we believed was true. Do you think our society
I think we're way more aware of that.
Do you think so?
I think so, yeah. I think that we... I don't know, because it's dude, the more we know, the at the same time, our morals and ethics are slipping away. Mm-hmm. And so it's we might know more. We're way more informed for sure.
Yeah. Well, think about it from a Mark's perspective in the
anything
industry.
You want to know, dude. Anything you want to know.
It's right there.
It's right there. And you still have to question the sources that you're getting it and, do accurate research.
And normally you look at views and comments, and that's kind of...
And even that could be questioned, because, I mean, it's well known that, Google curates searches. It's affected by things. And so, any mode of media content or curation, has to be questioned.
Yeah.
Anything.
Yeah. Hopefully this video stays up now that we red flagged it 6, 7, 8 times. But
we'll stop talking about him taking it down.
Yeah, it's crazy, man. But really cool to have more. I mean, inside the mind of a guy who's killed some giants, constantly.
Dude, I can't think of anybody other than, maybe Bill Winke that we've had on the podcast that has a more thorough experience or has had as big of an impact in the industry as as the Drurys.
Yeah. Oh no, dude.
In those videos I mentioned just a moment ago, it's they weren't killing that big of bucks. That was also a time that was probably 20, 30 years ago where it was they were the only guys killing deer.
Yeah, nobody was killing bucks
with bows
on
film. That was amazing.
Yeah. Well, no, I mean, I 100% believe that from an influential side in the industry, those guys are probably
top dogs, man.
Way up there.
Yeah.
Guys like Ben Rising came from guys like Mark and Terry Drury. You think about the people that have been kind of put out there from Mark and Terry, it's a giant. And, those guys have had, I thought it was cool that Mark brought up the sponsorship thing because it is an economic thing. And I can't imagine how hard it is now versus then. There was a time in the 90s and early 2000s where, like, if you were a top dog show, you were raking in the sponsors. Now you're competing against Joe Bello, who will basically make a film and sponsor Winchester for free because he just likes doing it.
Yeah.
And that's changed the landscape.
And I respect Mark for his approach to that, but it's even if you choose your sponsors, because of the model, like, it's not, like I'm saying, it's not the manufacturer or any of these content producers' faults that this is the case, but by nature, you're going to want to promote your partner, promote your partners. That's the point of the relationship.
Part of the deliverables.
Yeah, essentially. And so, like, just the nature of that model is unfortunate because
it doesn't match what today's society model is, which is just make content about whatever you want.
Yeah.
In that whatever you want has to be sponsor plug A, B,
it's just
C.
At the end of the day, man, everybody's got to make money. And so wouldn't it be great if anybody could just make a great hunting show and get it where people could see it totally unbiased?
Yeah.
And essentially, I think that's what, like, platforms like YouTube aspire to be, but you have a lot of unvetted or unfiltered or just low quality stuff that's there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And, those people can't really make a lot of money doing that. And just because of what it is, it's just a tough.
Yeah.
It's a business, it's a passion and it's a business.
And that's the hardest part. And I remember even when I came into the industry, I like looked up to Mark and Terry and Bill and these guys. Yeah. And like, but I come into it and I'm thinking like these guys, but then I have to realize like these guys, this is their job.
Waddell's another one. I should mention there. We'll have him on at some point.
It is their job. Their job is to make money to support their family with this business. So I can't expect him to not get sponsors and not make money.
Sure.
I hear that Aaron and those guys get that all the time. Like, I wish those guys never had a sponsor. Yeah, cool. They
got to make money, dude.
The only way they can produce this content is, they got to make money. So what do you want them to do?
Yeah.
And it's like, you constantly are hearing this thing. Now, given there are some terrible ones where the entire show is 30 minutes of an infomercial, and I can't stand it. It's junk. And I think that's where Mark's saying some of the things that are getting out there, like, it's not appropriate for what should be going out there as a representation of a hunting show or a hunting industry.
Well, and frankly, because of all this stuff, and I haven't seen the Outdoor Channel per se lately. Like, so, dude, I have a Samsung TV, and I watch. There's 3 hunting channels on there. There's Pursuit Channel, Outdoor America, and Waypoint, and they're okay.
And you usually have like Drury's content's probably on one of those.
I don't think it is.
It's not. It's probably on Outdoor America because they have Outdoor Channel stuff on there. Maybe not.
I haven't seen
new
it.
Stuff.
I haven't seen it, but maybe. And I stream YouTube to it.
Mm-hmm.
That's kind of my deal. I'm gonna take a wild guess and say that the quality of Outdoor Channel content has decreased.
But
it's not their fault. It's just because of the nature of like all these platforms that exist.
Mm-hmm.
It's like you said, we're sparse, we're spread out.
You think that's because it's created a lax producer, or
no? It's created like a content vacuum.
Left.
They've left. They've gone,
and so they have to take other people in to replace them because again, they're a business. They're making money.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, it's a tough thing. I think Mark and obviously Bill and these guys, like the guys who have been TV.
Hold on, let me not retract, but circle back. It's money. It's the fact that manufacturers have way more options.
Yeah.
And it's ineffective.
Yeah.
Ultimately. At one time, it was one clear path. Hunters pay, manufacturers pay, TV. Sponsors, influence, buyers pay.
Yeah.
Here's the triangle.
The triangle of death.
Now, buyers pay manufacturers. Manufacturers have a huge spectrum, it's like herding cats to try to get your product in a sponsor's influencer's hands in front of the right people.
Yeah, and their own content. Like they could be making their own content and serving through Facebook ads and Google ads and stuff.
Yeah. There's so many more vehicles for it, whether it's
and then think of how those buyers then interact with all those different vehicles. It's crazy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
It's gotten a lot more complex, for sure.
Yeah.
I think
efficient yet somehow inefficient.
Yeah, I mean, I think the manufacturers have more options. The buyers have more options. The content producer is who is having to do more work.
There's just more competition.
They're probably doing more work for less money. Would be my guess.
Maybe. I don't know, but I mean, use like Kim Kardashian, like probably does no work for all the money.
Right. Who 10 years ago, 15 years ago would have made no money. Because,
or look at any of these TikTok. I mean, I know some of these TikTok,
are making bank.
Nothing against TikTok. We're on TikTok.
Yeah.
We're making a ton of money for like.
We're on TikTok?
Doing pretty much nothing.
Yeah.
It's interesting.
We're not making any money on TikTok.
Yeah, we're not making any money. Period.
But we have you guys listening.
Yeah, but we enjoy doing it. That's why we do it.
Yeah,
we love it.
Well,
you do it because you love it.
Yeah, you love it.
Spiraling towards deer season in a good way.
Yeah, if you're listening to this, man, it's like August practically. Maybe is August. I don't know.
Yeah, dude. Maybe by then we've been to Kansas. Got some cameras up and running around. We'll take some stands with us maybe. Well, we're flying.
A little Bed Bath & Beyond. I don't know if we'll have time.
Pretty nice little Saturday plan.
Mark Drury, episode 84. 16 away from 100.
Later.
Welcome everybody to DeerCast. This is the latest version with all the newest of features within the DeerCast app, and you're going to be absolutely blown away, much like we are. We've been working on this for quite some time. Enjoy it. It was created for you.
The DeerCast forecast, really the foundation of our app. It is an algorithm that interprets 13 different weather variables across 13 different phases in an hour-by-hour basis out to 14 days if you have that particular level.
The DeerCast forecast was a brain trust many, many years ago. Somewhat unbeknownst to Mark and I, we're both very, very analytical when it came to whitetail movement. We really didn't know what we were doing. We made every mistake in the book, but at the time we were even back then being very, very analytical and documenting and trying to log information away as to why they were moving, when they were moving, where they were moving. We just couldn't quite put it all together or figure it out. Fast forward to today, and things are a little bit different. An hour-by-hour, real-time whitetail movement predictor that's algorithm-driven.
It is the most advanced algorithm ever produced for whitetail deer. It's unique and extremely accurate. We released it a few years ago. Since then, we have tweaked it and tweaked it and tweaked it, and right now, there is no doubt about it. It is the most powerful tool you can have for predicting whitetail movement.
Is there any bigger task or a tougher problem than trying to figure out a whitetail deer as far as when they're going to move during daylight hours? It literally takes whitetail movement down to the hour up to 14 days in advance. So it will allow you to plan trips. It will allow you to try and maximize the time in a stand. So it's all about getting out there and hunting whitetails when they're up on their feet and moving.
Take me